In the late 1940s and early 1950s, demand for housing was at an all-time high. Driven by the large numbers of servicemen and women returning from World War II, this demand was a concern on a national level. One idea was realized in the Lustron Corporation. Join me as I talk to Todd Zeiger, director of the Indiana Landmarks Northern Regional Office, about these unique homes.
Todd, can you tell me a little bit about Lustron houses?
Lustron houses, one of my favorite pet houses. Post-World War II prefabricated house that was designed as a way to help meet some of the returning GIs after World War II. Huge need for housing after the war. Lots of different companies were trying to meet that. Lustron Corporation was billed as the way to do it. Kit house that could be brought to site and assembled with 3 tools.
What were they made of?
Lustron houses are all metal. So if you think about building your house out of the same material that you have your washing machine or your refrigerator out of, that's a Lustron house. So the outside panels are enameled steel. The studs are pressed metal stud. Inside is also an enameled steel, as well as the roof, which is so amazing. After 60, 70 years, they are still in really amazing little houses.
So they were kind of easy to take care of, maintain.
Super easy to take care of. Some of the funnest part of the advertising you can see in Life magazine and other places. They show a homeowner out with a hose spraying down the outside. Of course, she was in her dress and heels at the time, but yeah, super easy to maintain. Really one of the first houses that was built as maintenance free, and here we are all these years later. Really, they have lived up to that building.
So they could hose down the outside and the inside.
Absolutely. If you have a drain in the floor on the inside, bring the hose and cover up the electrical receptacles, of course. But yeah, so very easy to maintain. That enameled steel, super easy, and if it doesn't get nicked, really can last forever. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was every Lustron house exactly the same?
Lustron houses were fairly similar. They came out of a factory. They're a kit house, about 3,000 pieces. Come to the site on the back of a semi truck, and you would unpack the trailer from the outside to the inside, and when you got done, you'd have a house. Amazingly, basically 3 tools were needed: crescent wrench, a rubber mallet, and a slot screwdriver for the most part, and you could put this house together. Pretty amazing kit houses. They're all very similar: living room, dining room, kind of open concept with a kitchen and a pass-through, a couple bedrooms and a bathroom. Those you're going to find in pretty much every Lustron. The one we're at today is a 3-bedroom. There's only about 750 of those made across the country. They basically pushed the outside wall a little bit further out to add that 3rd bedroom. But when you're in one, you're very much familiar with all of them, whether they're a 2 or a 3-bedroom. Pretty much the same size, same sort of elements with regard to the bathroom and the kitchen and the dining room and living room.
So they came with a washing machine and a dishwasher. Yeah. Anything else?
It's one of the fascinating parts you read about. One of the amenities that you could buy as part of your Lustron house was a kitchen cabinet that was your kitchen sink, and also then had a washing machine that could be used as a dishwasher, which is, people are fascinated by that. This one still has one of those original cabinets where you put an insert into your clothes washing basin, and you could wash your dishes with that. So forward thinking. It kind of sounds, I don't know, kind of odd, but it actually worked out for a while pretty well. It had some built-ins, other amenities in the house. Had a built-in between the kitchen and the dining room, a pass-through that you put your china. You can separate those 2 rooms. The bathroom has a built-in cabinet for a medicine cabinet, as well as a lower cabinet. Laundry room has a cabinet. So they were trying to think ahead about what a common family would need in their house.
So they had shelving, and they had cabinets for your dishes, and they had a vanity in the master bedroom.
Yeah, so the master bedroom vanity has a mirror, has cabinets, closets on both sides. The living rooms have a shelving unit with a mirror in the middle of it to kind of give you some space and display all your knickknacks from the 1950s.
Okay. And there were different styles to choose, different floor plans to choose from. Were there different colors to choose from?
Different colors. You could have any color you wanted as long as it was beige, kind of a blue from the 50s, gray, or a yellow. So as long as you wanted one of those four colors, you could have any color you wanted. You see a lot, early advertisements were the bluish color. So you'll see that in a lot of ads, especially the spec home that was put up in Illinois was that blue. You see a lot of the beiges and the grays like we have here on this site. Fewer yellows, but they're around, but those were the four colors, both like on the inside of this one, it's gray inside as well as outside. So if you liked gray, you're golden.
All right. Who came up with the idea for a Lustron?
So a lot of it's attributed to Carl Strunlin, who's a fascinating figure. He actually has ties to Oliver Chilled Plow in South Bend. Left there, worked for B.F. Goodrich for a while, came up with a couple of patents that kind of introduced him to the federal government. Ended up working for a company called Chicago Vitreous, which we're here at the Indiana Dunes National Park. Just down the street was a home built by Chicago Vitreous for the World's Fair. The Armco Faro House was a Chicago Vitreous model house at the 1933 fair. Fast forward to 1946, Strunlin was working for VIT at the time and had gone out there to try and get steel to make gas stations. Wasn't successful. The United States government wanted steel for houses, post-war housing, and said, well, you can't have any steel for gas stations, but you can have all you want for houses. Strunlin was like, funny you should ask that. I happen to have plans right here with me for a Lustron house. Can we do a deal? Yeah.
And I think I had read somewhere that they had used all this steel for World War II, and then after the war was over, they kind of had this surplus of steel.
Yeah, so if we think back, why was steel in short supply? The federal government controlled all resources because of World War II. And so they were making things for the war. When the war ended, they had control of the steel. They wanted to push that towards production of housing. Lustron was billed as one of those ways they could make that work.
And they were all over the United States?
Yeah, so much like catalog houses, Sears, Roebuck, Montgomery Ward, Aladdin, you'll find them grouped near railroads, but then near interstates. So because Lustron was via a car or a truck, they were easier to move around. But Midwest, very popular. Further away you get from Ohio, the fewer you find, but there's a large collection here in the Midwest.
So how many were made in total?
About 3,000 were made on total that we've seen over time. People have documented. The 3 bedrooms were fewer, came late in the production, so didn't get quite as many made. But yeah, about 3,000 of those were around. We figure half survive. Lose a few every year, especially in high real estate markets where the small houses don't survive, but still a lot of them are still around. You can find them.
Awesome. And there's lots here in Indiana.
There are a couple hundred that we're aware of. Most recent survey done about 15, 20 years ago.
I mean, they really last.
They do. Yeah, this porcelain clad enamel, as long as the weed whackers didn't throw too many stones against the outside enamel, or somebody didn't decide they wanted to panel the inside, that would damage that. If they've been reasonably made, taken care of, they survive and they can be cleaned up and restored.
So if you find a Lustron, is it possible to move the Lustron?
Moving Lustrons does come up quite often. I'm aware of many that have been taken apart and stored. I'm aware of only one that's been put back together, and that's here in the Indiana Dunes. It's part of the Indiana Landmarks project. They came, and it's pretty straightforward. I mean, they came to the site as a kit. We have the manual that you can follow to put it together, and you just follow it to take it apart. It's always harder than it sounds, right? But so the challenge is just finding the location to put them, numbering all of the pieces, parts to make sure you can put them back together again, and then finding a location to put it. But it's technically possible. It's been done. It's hard to do.
Kind of like moving a log house.
Yeah.
I had a friend who lived in a Lustron, and she said that it was hard to find people to work on the house because they don't know what to do.
Correct. Yeah. Our best advice often is if you have to have something repaired, if you can get the panel off or whatever, it's really kind of like working on your old car. If it's the only way to go, at least getting it disassembled is a potential solution, partly because they don't make parts for these anymore. And so if you have a Lustron and it gets damaged, I've talked to several homeowners over the years. A car's hit one or something else has happened, and they're looking for parts, and there's only a few places that have them. So it's an endangered species in that regard. You can't just run down to Home Depot and buy a part for your Lustron house. It's fix what you got in a sense. Yeah.
So it's really a mid-century sort of small time capsule.
Right in the middle of the 1950s, mid 20th century. Here you have this one particular type of prefab house that meant to solve the woes of post-war housing. The house that America was looking for was one of the taglines.
It did help.
It helped, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, its form that you see was very typical for that time frame as well. These small side gable ranches, very popular. You'll see them all over the place, and so you can see why they designed it the way they did. It was the style kind of the time, very quick to put up.
Kind of a pre-ranch ranch.
Pre-ranch, ranch. Yeah. Yeah. We just call them Lustron houses, but yeah, kind of a small ranch, absolutely. Yeah.
So since there's so few left from where we started, so they're kind of endangered.
Yes, they really are. These are houses that are often in neighborhoods that are now being upscaled in a sense. Bigger houses, they become threatened because of the size. People don't understand them. They just see them. They're not familiar with them, which makes sense. And they're just a rare breed, and they really are a remarkable engineering feat. To design a house that you can bring in one truck and put together with 3 tools, that's a remarkable story. It ended up, it didn't end well for Lustron. Lots of reasons for that, lots of speculation about why that happened. Ultimately, it didn't end well. But from an engineering standpoint, they're a remarkable success story for America and really deserve to be protected and saved. And from a kind of a reuse standpoint, they're pretty easy to reuse. You need a lot of magnets, you can't hang a lot of pictures, but that's kind of fun, right? And so I just really encourage folks when they come across them to do their best to preserve them and embrace them at these little kit houses that they are, so they don't just disappear.
It takes a special kind of person.
It does. It takes a special kind of person, but it's a special kind of house.
Yes. So are there resources that people could look at to kind of learn about the history of Lustrons?
Certainly, if people are familiar with just Googling the word Lustron, but one really good resource is through the Ohio Historical Society. They have an entire section devoted to Lustrons. That was actually built on an effort that was done through the National Trust for Historic Preservation a few years ago. A lot of deep research there, lots of information on Lustron houses, as well as some technical advice on how to work on Lustrons. So if you have one and you're like, how do I deal with this or that? Some good advice. I would just point people to the Ohio Historical Society's webpage for some additional information.
Now, do they have a museum too?
So yes, the Ohio Historical Society actually has a Lustron on display, furnished with period appropriate furniture, which is totally in the right spot because they were made just down the street. It was a Lustron that was actually built in Arlington, Virginia. It was going to be demolished for a new house. A group got together, took it down, stored it for a while. Got put up in New York City at the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, for display, and then eventually ended up in Ohio at the Historical Society. So talk about moving Lustron houses.
Yeah.
There's one that's been all over the place.
Seen a lot of different places.
But it's great because you can go there and you can go through and it's furnished. You can get a sense of the size. And once you've been in a living room, dining room, kitchen of a Lustron, you've pretty much been in them all.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Todd, so much for being here with us today and explaining what a Lustron is.
Hey, I'm just glad to spread the word about Lustrons.